Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Let's speak to Michal Baranowski, who's the Managing Director of the German Marshall Fund East and Director of the Warsaw office. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. So we heard from Dmitry Peskov, who's Putin's spokesman, that they described the process as costly and bureaucratic, and he said it's obvious that Putin will be re-elected. Why does Russia hold an election like this if that is, if it is a foregone conclusion?
It's certainly a foregone conclusion, and calling it election really is an exaggeration. This is a misnomer. It's a sham election. We know who's going to win. All the opponents are either dead or in prison or in exile. The reason why Putin is still choosing to go through this theater is to gain legitimacy, to get sort of an approval from the public, from the population, with as high of a voter turnout as he can get. But it's certainly not an election.
Now, two anti-war politicians who were seen as genuine challengers were banned from standing. If people disagree with the war, what options do they have in this election?
Very few. One of the options that people have exercised is during the funeral of Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader killed or died, but clearly under the conditions of brutality in a Siberian prison. This is when people could express their protest of the brutal war in Ukraine. They chanted away with Putin and end with the war, but that's one of the very few places where they can express any dissenting voices, because this is a brutal dictatorship.
We saw some voters on Friday protested by pouring dye into ballot boxes and throwing Molotov cocktails at polling stations. Do you expect more of such protests?
I do. This is again. These people will go to prison, will be persecuted. This is a brutal regime. But yes, there is as little as we can see, but there is some civil disobedience. I frankly hope that Russians will stand up also in that kind of acts, but they are very brave acts, and they will be unfortunately met with brutality that this regime has shown, again, by, for example, killing Alexei Navalny in the Siberian prison.
Last month, there was a poll by the Levada Centre, which is an independent centre, saying that 75% of respondents said the country was moving in the right direction. So there is some support, isn't there, for Putin and what he does. How do you explain that, and what options are there for those who want to change the situation in Russia?
So the polls have for a while been showing a level of support for Putin, but we really need to understand the context. And the context is of a full informational dominance of propaganda by the Kremlin regime. So people don't really understand what's going on in the country, including they have no idea of the losses that we in the West know, that about 350,000 Russians have died in the war in Ukraine, that more Russians have died in the recent attack of the city of Avdiivka than in the Afghanistan war. So it is hard to break through this wall of propaganda, and that's why we are seeing the support for Putin that we are seeing right now.
And this election is being held over 3 days. How do you think the turnout is going to be, given that it's slightly different from previous elections, the way they're doing it? Well,
Kremlin is certainly aiming for as high of a turnout as possible. This is the really only measurement that is worthwhile, and there is zero independent observers in Russia, so it's going to be hard to even verify whether that turnout is legitimate and real. But yes, I would expect relatively high turnout because people are scared, people are coerced to vote, especially in the 4 occupied regions of Ukraine and Crimea, annexed illegally by Russia. But again, this is under coercion and under fear, very much reminiscent of the votes and so-called election during the Soviet Union times.
And tell us, given what you've been saying, why other candidates bother to stand in election if you think that it is controlled as much as you say it is?
Well, the only candidate that matters is Vladimir Putin, right? Any other possible, the other so-called candidates are part of the, they have no chance, and they have been allowed to provide a level of legitimacy. Again, the viewers and need to not compare what's going on in Russia to what we see in our democratic countries, in our democratic elections, but really see this as a anointment, basically, anointment of Putin that sees himself as a Tsar, and even Tsars at times had to go through this anointment process to give themselves a level of legitimacy coming from the people. But there is nothing more. There is no election because there is no choice in this process that we are seeing over the last 3 days, over these 3 days in Russia.
Michal Baranowski, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you.